Good morning. After a 2-week COVID hiatus, I am back, and I believe I am legally obligated to give Buffalo Bills fans a trigger warning. My co host, a Philadelphia Eagles fan, he's going to go in. You've been warned. Good morning and welcome to Monday's Hangxiety, Club Fantasy's weekly recap show where we look at the previous weekend's games and tell you when it is time to panic and when you should chill the fuck out. I am your host, back from weeks of not being on air, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, a very, very happy gentleman. Josh, I know there's been a lot of Victory Mondays. I have to think this one might be the sweetest because, man, did you guys earn that one? 7 points at halftime, my friend. And I know we're going to talk more about it later.
I'm honestly glad that my heart didn't stop because I feel like I had like 4 strokes watching that game yesterday. Like straight up, like my heart skipped a couple beats. I'm hurting this morning. Like as you can tell, my voice is a little out of it. But whoo, what a game last night! What a game!
Morning, Joel. How you doing, buddy? So to quote Joe Zolo, you had some mini strokes but quickly recovered. That's what happened.
For those that didn't watch Saturday, yes.
Go watch Saturday's show if you want to see the most politically incorrect person in Club Fantasy. Have a heyday on a Saturday morning. Folks, it was a wild week 12. First of all, scheduling-wise, with it being Thanksgiving, we already had 3 games on Thursday. But then to make matters even more insane, we had a Black Friday game for the first time ever. So it was a smaller main slate, but that also let you see a few more of the games. It let me see a lot of CJ Stroud. That's another guy I'm going to be talking very highly of in the show today. Before we jump into let Josh talk about his Eagles, I'm going to do a quick recap of the games going all the way back to Thursday. Packers show up and shock the Detroit Lions at home, 29-22. Josh, you said this on Saturday. Isn't this like their 4th consecutive Thanksgiving loss or something like that? Like
it's 7 straight.
7 straight. So, yeah, not great for the Detroit Lions. Dallas does what they're supposed to do, 45-10 against the bad Washington Commanders team. San Francisco goes into Seattle 31-13. First Black Friday game, 34-13. Miami Dolphins over the Jets. Then we get to Sunday's action. The Colts, 27. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 20. The Giants, 10. The Patriots, 7. It was the ugly game we all expected it to be. Steelers, 16. Bengals, 10. Titans go ahead and end Frank Reich's career in Carolina, 17-10 there. Jacksonville in a wonderful game. One of my favorite games, certainly my favorite game from the early window, 24-21 over the Houston Texans. Falcons pull it out 24-15 over the Saints. Rams handle business against the Cardinals. Welcome back, Kyren Williams, 37-14. Browns could not handle business in Denver. Not very surprising for rookie quarterback's first trip to the Mile High. 29-12, Denver wins that game. Philadelphia 37, Buffalo 34. More on that in just a bit. Kansas City recovers from looking just sluggish in this game, wins the game 31-17. And then in a extremely boring Sunday night matchup, 20-10, the Baltimore Ravens travel cross country and beat the Los Angeles Chargers. Before I let Josh talk about his Eagles, the one last thing we do is quickly recap the injuries. And I was mentioning to Josh before all of this, very small list this time around. So we call it the unnecessary shot of rumplements. These are the players who are waking up hurting. Chris Olave with a concussion. Demario Douglas also likely with a concussion. They said he was ruled out with a head injury. And guess what? Dorian Thompson-Robinson went ahead and got a concussion as well. So that's 3 players who left their games with a
brutal hit too.
Disgusting.
Whew.
Like,
that was brutal. I know the people that are just like, oh, it's helmet to helmet. He led with his shoulder.
Yep.
Like if you're going to hit a quarterback, that's how you hit him. The problem was he went higher than he should have. But I still feel like if he'd have hit him in the midsection, that whiplash would have been even worse.
I was just going to say he would have ended him if he hit him in the mid. The head being able to tilt back might have been what saved DTR there. So Amari Cooper left that game with a rib injury, and to just make matters so much worse for the Browns, who have really been going through it lately, Myles Garrett was in a sling with his left arm after the game and said to a reporter that he felt a pop in his shoulder, which is not a good sign for the Cleveland Browns, who are trying to do something in that.
Staying on that game, can we talk about the fucking Denver Broncos for a second? This team was left for dead after getting just like washboard by the Dolphins. Like, it was bad. 50-point loss.
They've
won every game since.
Yep.
They've won every game since.
And then the disrespect of and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has played so well, getting Cortland Sutton involved. Like, everything we've been waiting to see happen is happening. Like, this was you and Joe's prediction from, 18 months ago that Cortland Sutton was going to be the guy. Jerry Jeudy was going to be nothing. Russell Wilson would be efficient and love this. The running game looks good. Javonte Williams they're getting all the running backs involved. Samaje Perine also back from the dead. It's definitely a different Denver team than what we saw against the Dolphins.
If you needed some level of confirmation that Sean Payton actually is a good head coach, it's the 2023 season.
Oh, 100%. No, I think that's fair. And then one last thing, I keep pushing back up with the birds because let's talk about it a little bit, Josh. Frank Reich, 11 total games with the Carolina Panthers when they let him go. And you and I had a discussion about this before the show, and I think that discussion just needs to be what we're talking about right here is, and I'm going to let you bring it up because you're the one who brought it up, is there might have been some turbulence with the quarterback they selected.
Yeah, like everything that I've been hearing and seeing via Twitter is that when it came time to picking number 1 overall, and they gave up a haul to get that pick, including trading away next year's first round pick, which right now sits as the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 draft, on top of additional firsts and draft picks and a stud wide receiver in DJ
and
Moore.
The franchise wide receiver that your quarterback will be used.
Like, they did not allow Frank Reich to take the quarterback that he wanted. Presumably, he wanted CJ Stroud. If you are bringing a head coach on and committing to him via 4, 5, 6-year contract, whatever it was that Frank Reich signed, why are you not letting him draft the quarterback that he feels is the best fit for his offense and for the franchise as a whole? That does not make any sense to me whatsoever at all, bar none. Like, that'd be like saying, all right, I'm going to go take this job. You're going to pay me a bunch of money, but everything that I think that I'm doing, you think you have the right to tell me to do everything but just because you're paying me. What was the point of hiring me at that point?
So you have taken the words out of my mouth. What kind of research are you doing into your hire that 11 games into a season, you're like, we've made a huge mistake? It's not like Frank Reich was some new guy you found out in the world. Frank Reich was a known commodity in the NFL. And
he had a winning record in Indy with a different starting quarterback every fucking year. Like, if that doesn't tell you he's actually a pretty decent head coach, I don't know what will. But you strip this team of all of its assets to get what you're thinking and feeling is a difference maker at quarterback. I don't know whether Bryce Young can be that or not, because right now he hasn't proven it, but I'm not ready to write the book on him yet. But you got to give him time. He's not going to be a magician from day one.
You might also want to give him an offensive fucking line, because if you've watched any down of the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young, and this may be just his face, he looks like he's about to cry all the time because, like, you have to be fucking frustrated. You're getting hit on every single play. There's no ability to scramble out because you got your best wide receiver is 34 years old. There's just so much wrong with what they've done to Bryce Young.
This is what breaks young quarterbacks. Just look at when David Carr was the pick in Houston. Like, all those sacks, like, it takes a toll on you. It fucks with your, mental fragility. Like, you can't, realistically, the moment that you receive that snap, your mind is thinking, fuck, here they come again.
And like, that is the vibe I got watching Bryce Young yesterday.
Yeah.
That is 100%. And we're going to talk about this later. It could not be more opposite of the swag we're seeing from CJ Stroud. And this isn't a loss. It could not be more opposite. I want to go back to, I'm a Northeast Ohio native. I've brought that up on the show. And when the Browns used to do crazy shit like this and fire their coach and get a new quarterback every year, continuity matters in the NFL. And I'm just so bothered by the short leash environment that we've created, that we're just not giving people time to develop. We're not giving quarterbacks time. We're not giving coaches time. Like, the only thing I can think is Frank Reich almost had to have been at odds with Bryce Young. Like I'm talking not passive aggressive. There had to have been a straight up contentious relationship. That I don't follow the Carolina media, but that's That's the only thing I could take away from this is there had to have been anti.
I've heard some whispers that Reich wasn't coaching Young the way that he probably should have been coaching Young. So I think maybe there was that level of frustration a little bit. But again, like that's why you have a quarterback coach. It's a QB coach's job to coach the young player. It's Frank Reich's job to be the CEO, be everything, right? He's also the one calling all the offensive plays because him and Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator, kind of had this yo-yo match going back and forth on who's going to call plays and who's not going to call plays. So it was just a bad situation from the start. David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, has now fired 3 head coaches in the 5 years that he's owned this team. If you're a prospective head coaching candidate, why do you even want to take an interview with this franchise at this point?
Yes,
seriously. It truly is at this point.
And now let's go from a dumpster fire to whatever the opposite of a dumpster fire is, a beautiful rainbow. The Philadelphia Eagles on another victory Monday. It is up with the birds. This is where I shut up for 10 minutes and let Josh just go in. Go for it, buddy.
Oh, I've got a lot of fun stats.
You do. You have so much.
This is gonna be. This is I don't even want to call it like a swan song, but this is basically me gloating a little bit because before I get really humble towards the end, but also really obnoxious. So, fun stat: Nick Sirianni, the head coach that everybody loves to hate, is only the 3rd head coach in NFL history to guide his team to consecutive 10-1 starts or better. The other 2 head coaches, Hall of Famers Tony Dungy and Don Shula.
I'd say it had to be Don Shula because they went 13-1 the year before they went 14-0. So.
Yeah. And he's only been doing this now 3 years. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, as I mentioned in the startup, this is this game had all the emotions for me. Like going into the second half, again trailing by 10 points, 17-7. This just really was a back and forth, and it goes to my point of like this really is a bend don't break defense. But you will not find a better team in the NFL when it comes to making second half adjustments. Jalen Hurts was god awful in the first half of this game. And in the second half, baller. Like, you can look at the total yardage and be like, what are we talking about? 200 passing yards, 65 rushing yards. But he came through when this team needed him. Yeah. Like, they only had 65 offensive plays to Buffalo's 92. That's a big discrepancy. Huge discrepancy. And our starting safety, Reed Blankenship, played almost 115 total snaps because he also played on special teams. Like, it was a rough game for the defense and special teams in this game. But this is crazy. But Jalen Hurts extended his own NFL record with 14 straight wins against teams with a winning record.
Good Lord.
In the regular season. 14 straight. Okay. As I mentioned, they were outpaced this entire game. Eagles did average more yards per play than Buffalo, 5.8 to 5.5. But I was really worried watching that first drive when Jack Driscoll, who was filling in for Lane Johnson at right tackle, who was kind of a surprise inactive. But this was, I was hurting because that pass rush came and got him quick. They only gave up 2 sacks the entire game. So I felt a little bit better because if Lane can't play next week, we're really in for some trouble.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that here in a bit. But as I mentioned, obviously Hurts leading another 10-plus comeback drive. Yep. 8 straight for Hurts, winning 10 or more, being down 10 or more. Also an NFL record.
What kind of crazy stat is that? Like, that's, you can't teach that. You can't coach that.
When trailing this season, Jalen Hurts has 113.4 passer rating, the best in the NFL. Okay.
He's turning the ball over on purpose, Josh. He wants to be.
At this point, yeah, he's just trying to make it interesting. You know? He's just like, he's holding the string, and you're just the cat trying to play with it. Like, that's what he's doing. He's like, come and get it, you know? But yeah, enough about Hurts. Remember a few weeks back when Dallas Goedert got hurt, and I said it's wheels up for Devonta Smith?
Hmm.
Yeah. 2 games without Dallas Goedert, Devonta Smith has a 33% target share. Yeah. 33%. His last 4 games, he's averaging 19.1 PPR points per game. Absolute fire.
Kind of took over for A.J. Brown last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's what this is what teams are doing now. They're shifting that coverage, and Jalen's realizing, look, yeah, I could force the ball to A.J. Brown, but I got Devonta Smith on the other side. Why do I need to? And as long as they keep winning, it's not going to matter. So, and for everybody that knows me, knows how much I despise kickers. Jake motherfucking Elliott is a dog. Jake. Literally has never missed. Literally has never missed a 50-plus yard field goal with the game on the line and has a couple 60-plus yarders mixed into there. You can wax poetic all you want about Justin Tucker is the best kicker in this game. Homeboy missed a 40-some-odd yarder on Sunday night in primetime. Jake Elliott, dog. Bring it.
I think the reason you're going to hear much more good things about Tucker is because Tucker's done it for fantasy as well. Elliott was terrible for fantasy last year. That has turned around this year, but he was terrible for fantasy last year because you guys scored every fucking time you touched the ball. So
yep. And that's the thing is a good fantasy kicker does not make a great NFL kicker. Like, I just need you to hit clutch kicks. That's what I need you to do. So in fantasy, you want kickers whose teams suck in the red zone. For the beginning part of the season, our team did suck in the red zone. We've kind of started to turn it around a little bit. Yeah. So, but as I mentioned with the defense, it's bend, don't break. They gave up 505 yards, 173 rushing. A lot of that, though, was Josh Allen. So I tend not to, dwell too much on that. Like, it's
Josh Allen.
Like, he's gonna
Josh Allen was in his bag last night too. Let's be very clear. Josh Allen was playing his ass off. He just couldn't overcome his own defense.
No, really, seriously. And he only threw for 161 yards in the second half with 1 touchdown. So there's that. But yeah. And for a relentless pass rush, we only had 1 sack. So hats off to the Bills offensive line for that one. But as I mentioned, like this team is night and day from the first half to the second half. Like,
different game.
They make second half adjustments like no team in the NFL. And the defense is prime numero uno when it comes to that. Like Sean Desai, when he sees what he's got to work with, it's like a light switch in the second half. So, hey, they keep on doing it. I mean, they've got some injuries to deal with. Zach Cunningham, hamstring injury. Maybe Shaq Leonard's going to be on the phone. I don't know. They've talked about him going to Dallas. I believe Tuesday he has a visit. Philly was rumored to be one of the ones in on him, but they felt really good about Cunningham. Obviously, this injury might change things a little bit, especially because Nakobe Dean is on IR as well.
If Dallas lets him get out of Dallas without a contract, they are fucking idiots, plain and simple.
Well, I mean, they're fucking idiots anyway. Let's be honest.
I'm just saying, you know he's signing. He's not getting out of Philly without a contract. So you cannot let him leave Dallas without a contract.
No. And, of course, Fletcher Cox being on the sideline with the injury, that's going to put a lot more pressure on Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter because they've been able to rotate in and kind of keep themselves fresh. But if they have to play 80+% of the snaps going forward, it might change how the interior works a little bit more. But, all in all, we still got a week to heal up, rest up, to get ready for San Francisco, which, by the way, for all the Vegas odds makers out there, the best team in the NFL is a 2.5-point underdog at home to a team that got throttled by them in the NFC Championship game. How is that has got to be one of the most egregious lines I've ever seen in my life.
I feel like,
and if you know anything about the Philadelphia Eagles over the last 6, 7, 8 years, bring on all the hate, keep doubting them. This does not end well for San Francisco. 2.5-point underdogs. It is the only time in NFL history a 10-1 or better team has been a home underdog. Yeah. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Seriously. How can you sit there and watch Philadelphia and say San Francisco right now is a better team?
They're taking that
because they blow out teams they should blow out? Really? We have the hardest schedule in the NFL. We're winning those games, but apparently it's not good enough because we're not winning them by 25. Last year, we were winning the games that we needed to win, beating teams how we beat them, but our schedule was too easy and it wasn't good enough. Make up your fucking mind. Seriously. Seriously. Make up your fucking mind.
I was just going to say that this segment has, over the last 2 seasons, added. It's not just up with the Birds. It's also down with the Niners. Like, you always manage to get some in there where we have to go at the 49ers.
I mean, look, I pulled up this quote from, let me find my bookmarks here. Hassan Reddick after the game. Talk is cheap. They get to come back to the link. It was a lot of boo-hoos last year, a lot of crying, a lot of what if, a lot of this, a lot of that. They get a chance to come back in here, line that shit up, and prove it again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jagger. Thank you.
He said he wanted everyone to know that was with a Steve Irwin accent, that he is watching a Philadelphia Eagles fan in their natural habitat. Apparently, by natural habitat, he means winning on a Monday. So,
we're just yelling, being passionate.
Yeah, that's true. So first and foremost, we have so much from Joe Zolo, Wednesday's normal third co-host who will not be with us on Wednesday, apparently. I had no idea. I think he's saying Jake Elliott got that dog in him. Plain and simple.
Yeah, he does.
But then Joe just wants to take the show completely off track. I'm going to try to fit some of these in where they make sense. So let's start with Josh. We spent a lot of time talking about the Eagles. You strayed into the 49ers a little bit. Joe's favorite punching bag for years has been Sean McDermott. And I think there's something to Sean McDermott and Staley out in Los Angeles where they are just not winning the games they should be winning. And Joe throws in.
Talk about how the Bills will never win. That should be at the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the NFL. They should be leading winning football teams.
Yeah.
And they're not.
I mean, the Bills struggling to get out of the Chiefs' shadow. And then they're still losing to the good teams they face in every other conference or division. So I just thought that was interesting to where the Bills are stepping over themselves. I do want to go all the way back to, let's not forget Les Frazier stepped down at the beginning of this season. And I thought this defense was going to have some struggles. And so far they've in certain games played better than they should. Usually the games that you're supposed to win. But in other games, they've looked really bad. Usually the games where you're up 17-7 at halftime and allowed 30 second half points, obviously, including overtime. That's a rough one. Not a great look for the Bills there. Oh, Dave, I hope you saw the trigger warning at the beginning. Bills Mafia. Down bad today. Maybe not the friendliest show. But guess what? We're going to move on. We've spent enough time. And Joe, I'm going to get your comments in. You have so many. I can't let you run the entire show. We have a show sheet that we're going to follow. And the first segment is the shot of espresso. These are the great performances that got the juices flowing. Josh put in a lot of work on this one. This is going to be a very heavy Josh show, which is probably good because I shouldn't be talking that much anyway. And then I'll co-sign on a few of your players here. So Josh, go in again, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's start with Rashee Rice. I mean, we've been talking forever. The Chiefs need a legitimate wide receiver one. They could not make plays against the Eagles last week because they didn't have a legitimate weapon at wide receiver. Marquez Valdes-Scantling drops what could have been easily the game-winning touchdown or game-tying touchdown, whatever it was. I can't remember right now. Yeah. But 10 targets for Rice, 8 catches, 107 yards, a touchdown. They need to get these guys ready against inferior opponents because when the quality opponents come, they need to be ready, plain and simple. This was a good start for getting Rashee Rice more comfortable. We've been huge proponents of Rashee Rice.
Yeah.
Because we love SMU wide receivers.
I say SMU wide receivers, baby.
There you go. They've produced in the NFL. Highly underrated also because, again, it's SMU. But Rice, his snap share has steadily dropped the past 3 weeks. So getting that bump this week, adding in the production as well, this is what you want to see if you have Patrick Mahomes rostered, if you are a Chiefs fan, if you had Rashee Rice sitting on your bench, because you probably did after the last few weeks, or maybe you released Rashee Rice because of the last 3 weeks. This is what you want to see.
Yeah,
this is what the Chiefs need.
As
31 point.
Out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say, as I pointed out in my waiver article, rostership for Rashee Rice has not crossed 55% this season at any point. So you're hitting the nail on the head that people just keep dropping him. So.
Yeah, because again, his production is up and down because they can't figure out if they want to have Justin Watson as the featured wide receiver, or maybe this week it's Kadarius Toney and his 6 carries for 10 yards, or MVS and his 5 drops. Who's it going to be? It needs to be Rashee Rice, the rookie. This is kind of the time when rookies start to figure it out if they're going to make that leap. This should be a good sign. 31.3% target share, way ahead of his season high, which was 18.9% in week 3. This is what the Chiefs need. This is what we as fantasy managers need. I love it.
You hit the nail on the head, and Jagger calls him the prince who was promised. Shout out to Game of Thrones fans out there. You wanted to see this out of Rashee Rice, but you especially needed to see it in a game where Mahomes needed it. You mentioned, beating up on inferior opponents, but the Chiefs didn't look good in this game, and it was Rashee Rice coming in there and actually starting to step up to where these are the things you like to see is they needed to win this game, even with it being the Raiders, a 5-win Raiders team. So you still needed to win this game, but you definitely needed someone to step up in a spot where you need it. It's easy to step up when you're up 40 points. Step up when we're not playing well and we need a touchdown. So it was the right moment for Rashee Rice. So I really like that from him.
Love it.
Yep. And you got more for us, Josh. Our guy out of Los Angeles comes back. First game off of the IR. People were worried, should they start him?
No, I don't think it was really should you start him. Look, it's the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, you start Kyren Williams against the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. I don't think people were expecting 38.4 fantasy points against the Arizona Cardinals, but damn, I think he had like a little over 60% of the total running backs share or snaps. So even still, that was a downgrade from like the 90 to, the 85 to 90+% that he had been doing before coming or heading to IR. But 16 carries, 143 rushing yards, which for a guy that didn't have a lot of speed coming out of Notre Dame, you love to see it. Not going to lie. Exactly. We knew he was very capable as a pass catcher. 6 targets, 6 catches, 61 yards.
This is what you wanted to see again because of what we saw earlier in the season and didn't know if it was going to continue. So.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, the usage is there. And so this is my public apology to Kyren Williams because, it was kind of doubting him earlier in the season and tacked on another 2 touchdowns and now has more than the 6 touchdowns that I predicted that he would have. And it only took him missing 6 games to get there. So
he might have done this a month and a half ago.
Right? So if you smartly went out and tried to buy and successfully bought Kyren Williams while he was on IR, hats off, man.
I was just saying, this is going to be a show of us apologizing to one another because I was right about Kyren, but then I'm going to have to admit I was very wrong about Jalen Waddle, equally wrong about Cooper Kupp on Saturday. So a little sneak preview of what's to come back. And then, Josh, I love when you do this, and it's been happening a lot lately. You want to give a little praise to the Dallas Cowboys quarterback.
Yeah, well, someone has to. Look, Dak Prescott, he did it. 331 yards, 4 touchdowns, Thanksgiving, the lights shining on him. That's what you want to see if you're a Cowboys fan, right? Because this team chokes when it matters. That's why they haven't won a Super Bowl since the mid-90s. So if he's going through and doing this and playing like this, and this is what I talked about in the very beginning of this season, before the games even started, Mike McCarthy calling plays, this is going to be a very pass-heavy offense. That's why they didn't go and get a bruising running back to pair with Tony Pollard. They were going to throw the football, and they have done exactly that. And Dak Prescott has looked better this year than he has at any point in his career, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
He's been absolutely phenomenal. But seriously, when you score a touchdown and start eating a damn turkey leg in the middle of a fucking game, if you're the Washington Commanders, how do you not put a hit out on this guy?
How is he not hurt?
Like, seriously. Like, they straight up disrespected you, and you just rolled over like a dead dog. Like, seriously. Man, you got to be embarrassed if you're a Commanders fan. Seriously.
Yeah. For me, I wasn't. We did an entire CJ Stroud show when he popped off a few weeks ago. I just want to say, if you haven't watched, and I'm not talking red zone watched, I'm talking watched the Houston Texans play. And this past week with fewer games on red zone, you got to see a lot more of CJ Stroud. This kid looks so composed. He looks so perfect as an NFL passer. And obviously, there's still issues with his pass rush. Josh Allen got at him a few times at the end of the game. There are things that can go wrong here, but this kid never looks like the game's out of hand. And one of the things I love, Josh, is he is always looking downfield for the throw. And NFL coaches love that, but fantasy managers need to love that because that's how you get Tank Dell 50-yard receptions. That's how you get Nico Collins. That's how you get Noah Brown resurrecting his career. That's where you get Robert Woods all of a sudden with 50-yard receptions. This kid is always scrambling, knows exactly where the line of scrimmage is, and throws it down the field perfectly. They're not the same build, but it reminds me of watching Donovan McNabb play so much, where McNabb could run, but McNabb was always looking for that downfield chuck, and that's where you got Freddie Mitchell and all that kind of fun shit that we got from the Eagles back in the day. This is what we're seeing from Stroud, but Stroud looks infinitely better. I have no problem saying that 10 games into his career. CJ Stroud is the truth. And I had been debating this. I do a very small podcast for my home league. And I had been debating in a league where it's a 14-team league. We can keep 3 players. And getting an elite quarterback is important. I had been debating, is CJ Stroud in that upper echelon? Is he a guy that should be kept? I think in a 14-team league, CJ Stroud is a keeper. I think this team, I'm only seeing them going up from this point forward. I am fully bought in on CJ Stroud. And just the way he handles pressure, his pocket presence, he's a different player from, honestly, most people I've seen play football this year. It's been absolutely insane.
So I have a 1 quarterback dynasty league where I drafted Stroud in the 3rd round because, again, it's a 1 quarterback, so QBs tend to fall a little bit. Stash him on taxi squad. I'm like, all right, I've got Gino, got Russ. I can roll with this. I also have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, Dallas Goedert. Like, the team is stacked.
Yeah,
of course.
Championship team.
Jefferson goes down, and I'm like, fuck, I need something. Gino's struggling. So I ended up trading Tank Dell, a 1st-round pick, to get, and Geno Smith to get Justin Herbert and a 3rd-round pick.
Now you're like, oops.
And I'm like, you know what? If I had just promoted CJ Stroud and kept Tank Dell, I would be doing so much better right now.
Yeah. Mentally on top of your team, you'd be doing so much better. Like, yeah, I mean, and I feel like that's a mistake. We didn't know the show, Josh, where we were praising him. I felt it getting too much praising him. I had to reel it back a little bit and was like, okay, let's see him do it a few more times. Well, we've seen him do it a few more times. I'm bought in. I'm a CJ Stroud guy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I love how the announcers kept pointing out that Stroud seemed to have been targeting Nico Collins a lot for a guy whose Buckeyes just got waxed up by the Wolverines the day before. So that was some nice kinsmanship there between those two. Josh, let's get to the morning mimosas. These are the
real quick before we hop to those. I want to give a couple honorable mentions. One, because
I forgot you had honorable mentions. My bad.
Because he's a club fantasy favorite. Jaylen Hyatt, first 100-yard game of his career, but also the first 100-yard receiving game by a New York Giants pass catcher this year.
Ever.
So big props to that. He led the Giants with 6 targets, 25% target share. I want to see this kid play.
I do too.
Because he burns secondaries and corners so quickly with his speed. But the offensive line is so bad, quarterbacks don't have the time to throw. Tommy DeVito, bring it, baby. Let's go. This whole Italian thing, I'm in it, and it fits so well in the New York culture.
I was just gonna say,
like Sirianni and Philly, like they just get it.
The culture, but more importantly, the mindset. Jalin Hyatt needs a quarterback that is a fuck it quarterback, and Tommy DeVito is a fuck it quarterback. So
he's got nothing to lose. He's a 3rd string undrafted free agent who is literally, this is the most playing time that anybody would have thought he would have ever received. But what he's doing, he's setting himself up for, at minimum, a 10-year career as a backup, which, you know what? Just look at Chase Daniel. He made a pretty good living being a backup quarterback. So it can happen. You know what? Hats off, Tommy DeVito. Shut up, Joe.
Joe never missing an opportunity to go at his Patriots.
I know, right? But, you know what? Hats off to him. And you know what? The remaining part of the season, they need to evaluate this receiving core. They gave Darius Slayton a 2-year contract. He'll, next year is kind of the end of that. Isaiah Hodgins is who he is. Sterling Shepard kind of on his way out. They invested in Wan'Dale Robinson, 2nd-round pick, Jalin Hyatt, a 3rd-round pick. They obviously need offensive linemen. They're going to be in a position early in this draft to get potentially one of the top wide receivers as well as one of the top offensive linemen. So they need to be able to decide which one is going to be more important for this team. And who knows, if they lose more games, could be a top quarterback too, instead of Daniel Jones. So there's a lot of ways that this team can go, but seeing what they have in Jalin Hyatt, they absolutely need to do that in the latter part of the season. And then hats off to Jessie Bates, because homeboy's a dog and we've all loved him on the show. Joe in the comments has been a huge proponent of Jessie Bates. 92-yard interception return for a touchdown and a forced fumble at the end of the 3rd quarter on a absolute beautiful play. Just punched that ball right out of Taysom Hill. Right now, the defense is why Arthur Smith still has a job. So we can be mad at the defense because Arthur Smith still has a job, but hats off to that defense because they've earned their money from the offseason. Yeah,
I think it's a really good point, because that defense, you said they've earned their money, but they could not have been. That's the biggest turnaround I've seen in a long time. The Atlanta defense was so bad last year, and they brought in the right kind of role players, and they've truly stepped up this year to where they're out here beating up on Derek Carr. Has not had a bad season, especially not turning the ball over. He hasn't turned the ball over a ton, but he did it enough in that game to let it.
Look, Derek Carr hasn't been so bad. He usually averages 1 touchdown a game. Great in real life, good enough in real life, not great in fantasy. And of course, I cracked the joke. Well, he's already thrown the one. It was just to the other team.
The wrong team. Exactly.
There you go. That was the only touchdown he threw all game.
And that was his only one. You have to think, I know they put a lot of money out there for Carr, but he hasn't been healthy. You have to think, you got to be itching to give Jameis another chance. He's looked good in limited time.
The problem is they're still in the hunt. Like, if the team was like 3 games back, they'd probably make the switch, but they're only a game out of first. That's who they brought in to be their starter. So they're not going to pull the plug on it right now. And that's just,
a touchdown a game,
byproduct of being in a bad division.
I say a touchdown a game just ain't going to get it done, but I guess in a bad division, it could get it done. So yeah, it's such an ugly division, but hey, the Falcons, we made this joke last year that the Falcons should be as soon as Brady retired, we were like, are the Falcons going to be a favorite to win this division? And here they are again, back on top. Josh, it's morning mimosas. We got that tingling feeling that something great is on the horizon, and you're going back to Thanksgiving and the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about Jordan Love. He's definitely taken some lumps this year, and I get it, but for somebody that's in his 4th season in the NFL, he's basically a rookie, and I feel like that tends to get lost. Over his last 3 games, 879 passing yards, 7 touchdowns. He's starting to figure it out, and he looked really good on Thursday on a short week against a pretty decent defense. And I say decent because the back end is terrible.
It's secondary just is non-existent.
It's rough. But this team needs all the momentum they can get. Like, they're riding right now in 3rd place. Minnesota in 2nd, kind of hanging on by a thread. They've had a lot of, turmoil when it comes to injuries, potentially getting Justin Jefferson back here probably by week 14. But, quarterback turnover, losing Kirk Cousins, bringing in Josh Dobbs in the trade, losing Cam Akers, the running game can't get going. A lot of issues there in Minnesota. But if Jordan Love can keep this Packers team going, but more importantly, develop rapport with these young weapons, because that's what we've all felt was going to be the issue with this team, because there's not a single receiving option on this team that has more than 2 years of NFL experience.
Yep.
That's not going to help a young quarterback grow and mature and reach its level of potential. So we had to exhibit some patience.
Yeah.
Jayden Reed, who I'm going to talk about here in a bit, has come on. Romeo Dobbs has been consistent. He scores touchdowns, even if he's not lighting up the receiving.
I'd say he's boring, but he's what Jordan Love needs.
Correct. 100%. Christian Watson has dealt with his fair share of injuries, finally had his breakout game on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, now Luke Musgrave is on IR, but there's still enough weapons there that all they need right now is a running game.
Yeah. I mean, they drafted Tougher Craft in the fourth round of the same draft. So this is a Mark Andrews, Hayden Hurst situation where you're going to see Tucker Craft step up
and
play football.
Kraft scored a touchdown this week.
Yep.
So there's a lot to like as this season closes out. And outside of next week against Kansas City, they end their next 3 games at the Giants, home to Tampa Bay, at Carolina, and at Minnesota in week 17. Those are all winnable games for this team. But more importantly, that is a schedule that can lead you to a championship in fantasy football.
That's what I pointed out in the waiver wire.
30 plus points in fantasy this week, at least in 6 point per touchdown leagues. So, yeah, there's a shot there.
No, and I don't know. You kind of have them separated if you want to go into more on Jayden Reed since you're already talking about the Packers. So,
yeah. So per JJ Zacharison's data dump thread that he does on Sunday nights, Reed has 15 plus PPR fantasy points per game, 3 straight games. And the one thing that I love about his usage, they're using him on a lot of runs and sweeps. So they're trying different ways to get him involved. And this is all kind of coincided with the Aaron Jones injury, right? Aaron Jones has not been great for this team this year. Nope. And so at this point, do you even want him coming back? Because he's going to disrupt the rhythm. You basically restructured his deal to a 1-year contract. AJ Dillon ain't all that. I get that.
Oh, you have to redo that entire running back room next year.
At 100%. 100%. Like Aaron Jones, for as dynamic as he is, his time in Green Bay clearly is done. He can be a leader on that team all he wants, but they're just not using him the way that they need to use him to be effective and be as effective as he can be. So, like,
hold on.
Yeah.
We got an upset Green Bay Packers fan.
I don't know if he's upset or the fact that I'm actually like singing praises for the Packers because I've been shitting on them for weeks now. So
I want to bring up something very outside Packers related, a few years ago Packers related. You mentioned, they're not using AJ Dillon the way you thought he would be used, yada, yada, yada. You can't convince me Jamal Williams wasn't sold a bag of goods going to New Orleans where they just you left the perfect situation in Detroit. And probably situations elsewhere where you could have been used to go to New Orleans after scoring 18 touchdowns to just be flat out fucking ignored. I was thinking about that yesterday. Like, my goodness, Jamal Williams, one of the most likable guys in NFL history, has to just be angry right now.
Yeah, I would be too. Straight up, I would be too.
Like,
I mean, he's getting replaced on most downs by freaking
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, exactly. By Taysom fucking Hill. Like, seriously. So, yeah, I don't get it.
Oh,
I love this.
We're both putting it up here.
What has he done for you, Joel? Seriously. This season, at 28 years old, what has he done for you?
That's like, we're seeing 3.7 yards per carry. Just a lot, like, what is it? 2 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, he hasn't done enough for me to feel comfortable about that running game. Certainly as a fantasy manager, I don't feel comfortable starting him anymore. So
yeah, exactly. So
I don't know.
If I'm a Packers fan, if I'm the Packers front office, I'm thanking Aaron Jones and saying, sorry, dude, time's up. Like, it's time to move on.
Yeah. And Josh continues our apology show with Najee Harris, who we have been throwing dirt on his grave for 11 weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, but see, and this is kind of my thing, is that we've been shitting on him for obviously the bad football, the lack of yards per carry. The offensive line his first 2 years has been just god awful. 1 game without Matt Canada, 99 yards, and a touchdown. Lack of receiving notwithstanding, pretty solid game, not just in fantasy, but also in real life. The offense is moving. They're working the middle of the field. Are we 100% sure that Najee is bad, or was Canada's scheme truly that awful that they just said, Najee, this is what you have to do? I don't care whether it's good or bad for you. Because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Because they're working more the middle of the field. Obviously, if he's running for 99 yards, that tells me that the blocking scheme is different.
Yeah, very.
And he doesn't have to break 15 tackles before he even gets back to the line.
I was just going to say, previously, it would have taken him 50 carries to run for 99.
Exactly. So, like, I'm feeling this. Like, 3 more snaps than Jaylen Warren. Okay. Like, they want to get him more involved. He's a good back. Like, give him the football. Use him in the receiving game. Use him where he can make plays. Najee can be that thumper. He can be that, sort of Zeke to Warren's Pollard, right? Like, let Warren be the more efficient guy. Let Harris be the in between the tackles grinder, because he's very good at that. I mean, he's a 230-pound running back. Like, he should be good at that.
Jacob puts out what you alluded to, the O-line improvement showing immediately.
Exactly. 100%. Like, Samalo looked better. Jones, the rookie tackle from Georgia, he's started to play better. Like, they made moves in the offseason to get better line play. Yeah. But again, we didn't see it because Matt Canada's offensive play calling is god-awful. So now, hey, bring it. But this is what I love. The next 5 games, Arizona, New England, at Indy, Cincinnati again, and at Seattle to close the fantasy season.
I was going to say, so that schedule goes directly against Joe's comment that the moment we apologize for Najee Harris, he goes back to 1.9 a carry.
His schedule is set up for him to be a league-winning running back. I'm just throwing that out there.
The problem is if you've been holding Najee this long, you're
probably
no
not
position to win any league. So that's
those
just
do be the facts.
not going to work out well for anyone. Before we get to my quick ones, we did actually have a question here. Let's go back to that. So running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Ekeler, Josh Jacobs. Basically, they want to know what to do with those 3 rest of season. So when I look at these names, what's funny is Eckler's going to come up a little bit later in the show for this exact reason, is you're looking at guys who are getting hot at the right time. I think Taylor's going to be fine. I think this Colts offense is starting to gel with Gardner Minshew, though we need Minshew to not steal the rushing touchdowns. Getting shut down at the 1-yard line for Taylor, I think twice in a row early on in that game was heartbreaking. Jacobs is still capable of breaking that long touchdown like we saw this week. And Austin Ekeler actually has one of the best schedules. I think it's actually the second or third best schedule for fantasy running backs down the stretch. So to me, it's a flat out hold situation. I don't know if you're still in a trade situation. If we're trying to decide who to start amongst these 3, that's going to be playing.
Why you have a flex spot. You start all 3.
Yeah, exactly. Or start all 3. Exactly.
I mean, Josh Jacobs, the efficiency metrics have been way down this year. Obviously, the 60-yard touchdown scamper helps raise that up, but this offense has been very inefficient to date, even after the firing of Josh McDaniels. They come out hot the beginning of the game, second half of the game, but there's not a lot of great in-game adjustments, and a lot of that is the inexperience of both the interim head coach and the interim offensive coordinator / play caller.
So and the interim quarterback.
And the interim quarterback, exactly. So, like, this team is going to rely on Josh Jacobs. They have to. And as fantasy managers, we just kind of have to, like, hope that he falls into the end zone, because 3.6 yards per carry, not loving it. But this is a guy that's going to see volume. He's built to see 20-plus touches a game, and they're going to give him 20-plus touches a game between the ground and the air. And that's why sitting Jacobs is difficult. So for me, this boils down to you're starting JT, like this, and those wide receivers, CD Lamb, Amon-Ra, Keenan
You're not
Allen.
benching one of these wide receivers.
Yeah, you're not benching any of those guys. So I think for me, you're choosing between Austin Ekeler and Josh Jacobs each week. Yep. Just my personal opinion. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Yep. But, running back depth is just so hard to accumulate. Like, I wouldn't even try to trade one of them to improve it.
Even if you still have a trade deadline, I don't think I'm
going to lose it. So I'm holding on to these guys, and you just kind of have to play Russian roulette, unfortunately. But I think all 3 are going to be fine. I will say the lack of receiving work for Jonathan Taylor over the past few weeks has been a little concerning, but he's doing so well on the ground. I mean, 90 yards and 2 touchdowns against a really good Bucs run defense.
Yep. That's the thing, is he played well against
I'm going to take that.
Yep. And
Shane Steichen runs a scheme that is very beneficial to running backs. I mean, just Exhibit A, Zach Moss, first half of the season, second in the league in rushing, or third in the league in rushing. Like, Zach fucking Moss, like, he'd been left for dead. So, yeah.
No, I agree completely. I think it's going to be you're in a situation where you're going to play the matchups, which is probably what you're playing right now. And I pretty well agree with Josh, except I think right now I'm probably starting Jonathan Taylor every single week and choosing between Ekeler and Jacobs. Where I think Josh, you said it was Ekeler and JT, or maybe
no, I said Ekeler and Jacobs.
Okay, so we do agree there. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm starting JT every week and trying to decide, which one am I going to start based on the matchups. And I will say Ekeler, as I pointed out, has some very favorable running back fantasy matchups coming up. So keep an eye on that. For me, for the morning mimosas, it's something we've been waiting on seeing for a while here, and it's easy to look at these guys and call them 1 week wonders. I am all the way back bought in on Derrick Henry and Rhamondre Stevenson for the 2023 season. Let me be very clear. It's not a dynasty take whatsoever, but we were ready to give up on these guys. They needed the week they had. They beat up on bad defenses, but again, I'm looking at future schedules. These are schedules that play out very well. I think the Titans have the 5th best schedule for running backs moving forward. And so when you see them beating up on the Carolina Panthers and these bad defenses, Derrick Henry goes for 4.2 yards per carry, 76 yards, finds the end zone twice, still not getting involved in the passing game. And that was something I want to throw out about Josh Jacobs. Josh, 52 targets this year. So even when he's not getting it done on the run, he's still being heavily involved in the passing game. You're not getting that from Henry, but we're finally getting it from Rhamondre Stevenson. It's something I brought up a few weeks ago that I wanted to see more and more of, and we're starting to see more and more of it. In fact, if you look at his last 6 games, 6 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets. That's exactly what you want to see, is 5 to 6 targets out of Rhamondre Stevenson every single week in a PPR format. Obviously, in this shit show of an offense, it's not going to net a whole lot unless he finds the end zone. And there's the worry that they are still using Ezekiel in short yardage situations, but those targets in PPR, I have a good feeling for the rest of the season that these guys are going to both be serviceable RB2s. And I think there's an argument to be made to consider Derrick Henry, at least for the rest of this season, as an RB1 after we were pretty adamantly telling people not to go get him a few weeks ago. I think seeing him against the bad schedule, I think we're starting to see things shake up a little bit better for him. And that's just where I am with these older running backs. I did want to say, since we were spending a little time shitting on the Patriots one more time, we'll go ahead and throw out there real quick that we were giving Joe a hard time after that hooked field goal to try to tie the game up, that it's a good thing they spent a draft pick to replace Nick Folk. And Joe pointed out that Nick Folk hasn't missed a 50-yard field goal since we started measuring field goals in yards since the Black Plague. And they went out to get the 5th best kicker in the Big Ten. Not good in Patriot land, folks. Not good in Patriot land. And Joe, don't worry, I have your last comment queued up. We're going to get to it in this section. It is the hangover. It is our biggest head scratcher of the week. And Josh, I'm actually going to interrupt you and go first, because it's something we've talked about for a while. I'm going to bitch about Arthur Smith a little bit later. How the fuck does Brandon Staley still have a job? What is going on? We're out here firing Frank Reich after 11 games. And I don't get what they're doing. They're just wasting Justin Herbert. They're wasting my guy, Keenan Allen. Such another great week there. I am just heartbroken on how in the world does this guy still have a job. And I'm going to go beat the dead horse of Arthur Smith. 4th and 2. Do you give it to Bijan Robinson? Why? You only use the 8th pick of the draft on him. Do you feed it to Tyler Algier, who's been super good for you over the last few weeks? No, that would be dumb. Do you give it to Kyle Pitts? You've developed these tight end runs. He's a hell of a runner. No. We're going to let Desmond Ridder choose a QB option on a 4th and 2 and just get smacked a yard behind the line of scrimmage. You deserve to lose that game, Arthur Smith, and be very, very thankful that your team went out and got Jessie Bates, as Joe pointed out in the group chat on Sunday. Jessie Bates out here single-handedly saving Arthur Smith's job. Maybe we should stop praising the guy and give him the double middle finger salute, because I would like to see Arthur Smith not have a job anymore. I'm very, very frustrated by the coaching situation in the NFL. Not great for me, Josh.
No, I'm so over Arthur Smith, Brandon Staley. A defensive-minded guy can't play defense. I don't, or can't coach defense. Excuse me.
I kept seeing these posts over the weekends, Josh, and I'm sure you saw it, that in Justin Herbert's career, I think it's that the team has scored 1,500 points and allowed.
Yeah, a little over 1,500 points and allowed exactly over 1,500.
But here's the thing that pissed me off is
straight 500 record.
They said in Justin Herbert's career, the Chargers have done this and have done, like, it's Justin Herbert's fault that they're allowing 1,500 fucking points. Like, let's back off here. This is a Brandon Staley issue, not a Justin Herbert issue.
They go from Drew Brees to Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert and wasted all of their careers.
Not a single Super Bowl to show for it.
Not a single one. It's just terrible. Absolutely terrible.
And then, Josh, you got some hangovers of some familiar names, and one of which that I have to eat some crow on.
Yeah. Look, for everybody knows how much I love Diontae Johnson, but I'm also not one to just let shit slide. This whole game started with the report coming out after last week's game where Diontae Johnson got into a heated argument with Minkah Fitzpatrick, had to be separated by Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, team meeting, blah, 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 ultimately led to Matt Canada being fired. All right. Roses and rainbows, things are looking up. Canada out. They march down the field. Kenny Pickett throws what should have been a touchdown catch for Diontae Johnson. The drop is the dumbest rule in football. Straight up. Because he caught it, had 2 feet down.
It is a bad product.
Tackled.
Exactly.
But hey, I can have minimal control of a football on the other side of the end zone, barely cross the line and it get knocked out, yet that's a touchdown. Yep. I do not understand the NFL and what
I can be a quarterback and reach over and have the ball punched out of my hands and it's a touchdown.
But it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
It makes zero fucking sense to me. Regardless of that, the very next play.
Yeah, this is the problem.
Diontae Johnson, they're running the football. So he's, not running a route or doing what he needs to do, et cetera, et cetera. Watches as the ball is fumbled and then slowly just kind of turns around as the Bengals defense recovers and starts running back up the field with it. That level of effort, I'm sorry. As much as I love you as a player and talent, etc., I'm not having it at all. This still, at the end of the day, is a team game. You can be very frustrated with this offense, how things are going and have been going for some time now, but they did what needed to be done. They fired the guy who's basically kept you in a cage for the last 2+ years. There should be some level of excitement. And if you're pissed off because the touchdown catch wasn't called, all right, cool. Forget about it. Have the memory of a goldfish.
If you can't mentally
take yourself out, if you're not mentally
take yourself
there.
Out of the fucking game.
People do it all the time. That level of effort, Mike Tomlin's not going to stand for.
Matt Canada would have, according to Joe Silva. He said he was just matching Matt Canada's play calling effort.
Basically. But yeah, there was a whole thing in the post game where, he claimed he didn't see it, that he was just doing routine during the play, blah, blah, blah. I'm not buying that at all.
There's going to because you were walking away. You weren't walking to the huddle. You were walking away, bro.
Yeah. That's just not it. At all. I can't stand it's very reminiscent of, the Super Bowl with Cam Newton where the fumble and he doesn't go dive for it. I just don't understand that level of play. You are a professional athlete. You are paid millions of dollars. Fucking get in there and play football. I don't get the effort at all.
And then me and Joe, you'll never hear an apology come from Joe, but me and Joe told a lot of people start some Cooper Kupp this week. And Josh, I thought about this all fucking day on Sunday. You just flat out said, why do we trust Cooper Kupp?
Yeah. Why do we trust Cooper Kupp? I get the target share argument. I do. I get it. When he's there, he sees targets. And truthfully, they did not need to throw the football very much in this game. But when they did, it really wasn't going Cooper Kupp's way at all. The Rams right now are in a position to where they are a very young football team. They have some guys that they kind of need to see what they got. Puka Nacua off to a really hot start has really cooled off. Kyren Williams has really taken the reins on being their featured running back, playing a lot of snaps, but again, missed 6 games. Can he hold up continually doing that level of snap share week in and week out at the running back position? Or do they need to find a complement?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that they need to figure out with this team. Cooper Kupp is 30 years old. He makes a lot of money, and I get that. You want him out there. You want to play him. They said on that broadcast that this ankle injury is recurring. Like it's something that he has to play through.
Yeah.
All it takes is one play for that injury to get aggravated. And then you get a stat line like 3 receptions for 18 yards.
Exactly.
So I'll say again, why are we trusting Cooper Kupp? Because right now we need to stop doing it in fantasy.
Yeah. And I think the plot hole that I missed was that they were never going to need to throw against the Cardinals. And I understand Matt Stafford threw for 4 touchdowns, but let's also be clear. 2 went to Tyler Higbee, 2 went to Kyren Williams. So no wide receivers were involved because they didn't need to be. So the simple fact is you have a hurt player, an older hurt player in a game where he's not needed. This was set up to be a failure game, and I did not see it coming.
Yeah, and I felt really bad because I let the hive mind from Saturday get to me when I was answering some of the YouTube comment questions after the show. And one of them was Cooper Kupp versus somebody. And, I was like, yeah, go with Cooper Kupp. And I was like, damn it, I'm kicking myself because I really would not do that. So I blame you guys for that one. Actually, I'll just say that one of you two answered that question.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are blaming Joe and I right now because Cooper Kupp definitely let a lot of people down. I had a guy right before the kickoff last night ask me, Zay Flowers or DJ Moore? And I was like, DJ Moore, I think, is going to have himself a big game. And Zay Flowers actually had a piss poor game. Let's be perfectly clear.
2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns, save it. And then he DMs me this morning. He's like, I went Zay Flowers. So I was like, look, man, going against my advice might be the best advice you get some weeks. So just keep asking me and doing the opposite. You ain't going to offend me a single bit. Folks, if you haven't figured it out yet, we're running way over today. So I hope you're in for
what we do.
Ride. Yeah, exactly. It's this is an hour and this is a 90-minute show. Let's just be perfectly clear about that. But I'm going to try to bring it in at 75 minutes. Josh, we got rid of the trade stuff this week because let's be perfectly honest, there's probably not a lot of trades, though there is a little bit of a buy-sell aspect to this. And so we're going to take a look back at the ADP of some of the highly ranked players who we could probably be considering whiffs at this point. Wide receiver 1 in ADP, Justin Jefferson. While he is the wide receiver 3 in PPG, he's missed so many games. He's the wide receiver 41 in total points.
Keep in mind, really quick, these numbers I did not update with the Sunday games. I want to preface that.
That's fine. They're probably still really close. Austin Ekeler, RB2 overall was what he was drafted. He is the RB25 overall, RB10 on a PPG. Patrick Mahomes, and this is one that saddens me to agree with, rather. QB1 overall, obviously. He was the QB 11 in total points, QB 6 in points per game. Bijan Robinson, I think we're going to talk a little bit about this here.
Probably a little higher after this game, but
I'm not sure people are feeling like he's a whiff right now, but he was the RB3 drafted. He is the RB19, probably up towards RB12 at this point, RB21 in a points per game. Derrick Henry, RB7. He was the RB7 drafted. He's the current RB18, RB21 from points per game. And Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 17 as he was drafted. He is the current wide receiver 35. He has missed some time on the season, but he's still the wide receiver 28 on a points per game basis. And Josh, you kind of asked this question, Sunday Bloody Mary Sunday, a category we brought back from last year where, if you're going to keep sticking with this guy, you're going to have the hangover. And it was a question of, should I stop sticking with any of these guys? And Josh, the more I looked at their schedule, it was really hard for me to say no, but you have a guy who you've been out on all year.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at it this way. If you saw that a wide receiver was averaging 3 rushing attempts per game and only 5.5 targets per game, was barely a wide receiver 3 on the season, but was drafted as a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside because of the offense that they are in, would you want them on your fantasy team?
No, not at all.
Okay, because I'm talking about Deebo Samuel here.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is how you tricked me with Jalen Waddle last time, too.
Yeah, like Deebo Samuel has 4 Now, granted, I understand he's missed a couple games with injuries, but this is Deebo Samuel. This is what he does. This goes all the way back to college because of the way that he is used. He takes a lot more hits and punishment than your typical wide receiver does. And they move him around in this. He's basically a glorified gadget player.
Oh, 100%.
Like Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. Those are the guys you want in this offense. Deebo Samuel is a decoy that touches the ball minimally, but can do a lot of really good things when he touches the football, but he's not a high priority for the offense. If this team gets down and they have to throw, it's not being thrown to Deebo Samuel because he's not a route runner. He's not a traditional wide receiver.
It's Ayuk and Kittle.
It's Ayuk and Kittle. So unless they are winning football games and they say, you know what, Christian McCaffrey's taken enough punishment, let's give a couple runs to Deebo Samuel. He is the ultimate garbage time player.
So you're kind of making the same point I would make, because I likened it in my head, Josh, to the situation you've pointed out all season between Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. One is going to eat, the other is not, but it's very game script dependent with the 49ers. And so I was ready to just co-sign this. And I went and looked at the per game numbers. And this is where I kind of like couldn't co-sign it, because he got hurt in week 4 and he was shit from week 4 essentially all the way to week 10. Where he missed games. He played 4, 5, and 6, did not play 7, 8, 9. One of those was their bye week, I'm sure.
9.
And then comes back, gets a rushing touchdown. And rushing touchdowns have been the key to his success this year. He's only had one good game really as a wide receiver, I guess 2, if you count this past week, but it was still a rushing touchdown that boosted him up. The fact of the matter is this: I'm not ready to say it's not just his injury that slowed him down for those terrible games. And I think they're going to continue to use him. There's obviously going to be games they're not winning, but I do think this is a team that's going to win more than they're going to lose. And they're going to keep getting him involved for what he is. And this is kind of the point the cop out, if you will, that I was making with Jalen Waddle is you just got to accept him for what he is. He's a wide receiver.
Well, that's fine. And I get that. But again, I go to the point, like you made this point earlier in the season. Wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 50, there isn't a whole lot of difference.
Yep.
They're all the same player. So you spent 4th, 5th round pick on Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
Has he paid off at ADP?
Not even
no.
Close. Flat out disappointment.
Based on the end of the season, do you think he's still going to pay off at ADP? No, I don't.
At ADP, okay. To be perfectly honest, no. At ADP, he's never going to pay off at ADP. Okay. So that's me not understanding the segment as well as I could have. If we're just flat out comparing them to their ADP, no. Do I think he's a playable asset down the stretch? Absolutely. My largest concern from this group, honestly, because again, it's the playable asset versus ADP. So clearly I got it right when I was thinking about Patrick Mahomes, is I think you're going to continue to be disappointed in Patrick Mahomes. I just don't think there's the receiving core there. We want to see Rashee Rice, the prince who was promised. We want to see Travis Kelce, and they're occasionally going to have their good games, but the drops continue to haunt them. We saw more this past week. I think, and Mahomes is turning the ball over. He's still out there slinging it. We have seen a lot of rushing attempts from him. I'm really happy he's going to have the most rushing attempts in yards of his life, which is great for fantasy purposes. But I think you're going to see a lot more 2 touchdown, 1 interception games where he's just middle of the road, QB8 to QB12, than you're going to see him at the top of the stack. So for me, you're not going to stop playing Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not going to recommend anybody stop playing Patrick Mahomes. But the question is, are you going to feel hungover? You are going to feel hungover. And as a guy who has Mahomes in so many leagues, every Monday, I'm like, I probably could have used my draft capital a lot better.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that the QB1 is never going to pay off at ADP ever, because they literally have to finish as QB1 to pay off.
And not even just that,
and he doesn't provide the same level of rushing upside that Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts do.
Yeah.
You draft
Josh 9 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah. Jalen Hurts has 10.
Yeah.
You draft Patrick Mahomes at QB1 because he is the safest option. And that rarely ever works at the quarterback position. That's why it's so much easier to just wait on the position and take the guys that fall to you versus being the one that starts the run.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And on the opposite side of that, Josh, with the hangover is the handful of aspirin. These are the players that whiffed during the draft. But if we buy into them now, we can be forgiven. And we've been leading up to this for the entire show. Bijan Robinson finally out here looking validated for fantasy managers who spent high draft picks, myself, or high auction values, myself, and have just been getting killed in the Twitter streets of people who are just not happy with Arthur Smith and Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, 16 rushes, 91 yards and a touchdown, 6 targets, 3 catches, 32 yards and a touchdown receiving. I believe the stat was he's only the second rookie ever to have a rushing and a receiving touchdown in the same game or something along those lines. Like, I thought it was a really weird stat, but I'm sure I'm missing some level of context with that. But I mean, this is the guy you drafted 8th overall in the NFL draft. He was the 3rd RB in ADP. He was a consensus first-round pick. When he sees the touches, you get it. It's understandable. Like I had somebody legitimately ask me heading into this week, should I start Jerome Ford or Bijan Robinson? And like I really wanted to say Bijan Robinson. I truly did. I'm like, the talent, it's just so hard to ignore that talent.
Yep.
But the way that the Browns have played on offense, especially with the backup quarterback, and the snap share that Jerome Ford has been getting, I'm okay starting Ford over Bijan Robinson to this week until Arthur Smith shows us that he's consistently going to give the football to Robinson.
Yep.
And now I feel like shit because he finally did exactly what I said that he needed to do. And Bijan, I believe, was the RB3 on the week.
2 leagues where I benched him. One, thankfully, for Kyren Williams coming back. The other for DeAndre Swift. I thought that he was going to have a much better game against the Bills. But DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery, I started over Bijan.
Yeah.
And now I have big decisions to make later on.
So this is the disclaimer. Stop including Bijan Robinson in your start-sit questions going forward.
Play him.
Just fucking play him and deal with it. I'm not going any other way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. When I went back and looked at this list, Josh, I went and looked at their rest of season schedules. And this is obviously something towards playoff time that I get really into. And so Bijan Robinson, excellent schedule. Austin Ekeler, excellent schedule. Derrick Henry, excellent schedule. And even Deebo Samuel, the 49ers, have a great schedule for receivers, but is he a receiver or is this just going to play out great for Brandon Ayuk the entire time?
Exactly.
So these guys, I feel like I'm going to keep starting every single one of those guys. I'm not going to feel that disappointed in those guys moving forward. Deebo, you've obviously convinced me the other way a little bit, but I think with the running backs specifically, there's been such a gap between good and mediocre running back this season that when you have guys that have the ceilings of Austin Ekeler, Bijan Robinson, Hunter Henry, what the fuck am I doing here? Derrick Henry, you get them into your lineup and hope it's the pop week because their bad week is the same as anybody else's bad week, but the other running backs don't have their pop week, whereas at wide receiver, they do. That's why Tank Dell is a thing now. And so those are what you're looking for. You can find that big boom week out of a wide receiver. You don't typically find it out of a running back. So start the guys who have the best chance to do that. And Josh, let's bring it home. This show was all designed to tell people when it was time to chill the fuck out. It was the good game, the bad game, just a blip on the schedule. Go for it, buddy.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go 2 different directions here. So one, chill out on David Montgomery. Yes, he had a great fantasy week. But I think people are going to wrap their heads around the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs outsnapped David Montgomery. Yeah. And they're going to play it on the fact that, well, look how great Gibbs was when Montgomery was out. They don't need Montgomery, yada, yada, yada. Look at the game script.
Yep.
Detroit was trailing most of this entire game.
Oh, and got popped in the mouth right at the start. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, when you're coming from behind, you typically want a wide receiver a running back that catches passes. Now, granted, I understand David Montgomery can do that.
But
Detroit
the roles
does
in
not
this
use
offense
him
are
that
defined.
way.
Exactly.
The roles in this offense are extremely defined. That is Jahmyr Gibbs. That's why he outsnapped David Montgomery roughly 2-1. Stop worrying. This is still a very good Detroit Lions team. They're going to bludgeon some of their opponents. This will sit well for David Montgomery.
Exactly.
So chill the fuck out.
I love it.
My next guy, it's a little bit of opposite reason. Don't get too happy with Tony Pollard. This is 2 straight weeks now. He scored a touchdown. Fantastic. Those are his first 2 touchdowns since week 1.
Yep.
His usage has been great these last 2 weeks. These have been prime matchups.
I was going to say, you got to look at the matchups.
This has been prime matchups for running backs. And you know what? He gets Seattle next week. Another fantastic matchup.
Yep.
Okay. After that, 4 games, and 3 of those 4 are against teams that are top 10 stingiest in fantasy points to running backs. Versus home to Philly, at Buffalo, at Miami, versus Detroit.
Yep.
Buyer beware on Tony Pollard in the fantasy playoffs. That's all I'm going to say.
No. I think it's a good point, and I'm just going to go back to Cooper Kupp a little bit. I'm not as worried as Josh is, but again, I'm not comparing him to the wide receiver 1. I'm ready to start Cooper Kupp as my wide receiver 2. I think this game was more of a post-injury, let's use him as a decoy in a game where they didn't need their wide receivers. I am still going to start Cooper Kupp every week, and I'm not going to temper my expectations all that much. I think Matthew Stafford still loves him and is still going to throw him the football quite a bit. So basically the opposite of what Josh was saying earlier.
Pick your poison, right?
Yeah, exactly. Guys, we covered deep waivers for you guys. These are all players that are available in more than 90% of ESPN leagues. Jaylen Hyatt, we talked about. You love to see a quarterback that's willing to say, fuck it, Jalen's down there somewhere. This kid has speed. He can do a lot with the ball once he gets into his hands, and I feel like the Giants need more weapons. What was it? Richie James, not even Richie James, whichever they're. Isaiah Hodgins scored a touchdown this week. They need to get people.
Beautiful run after the catch on him.
It was awesome. And Jalen
God,
Hyatt could do something like that.
Yeah.
Another guy that I think we're seeing a reemergence of chemistry that we didn't see earlier in the season, Greg Dortch out in Arizona, where we were all ready to give the throne back to Rondale Moore, and he had a couple of good weeks there, but Greg Dortch just seemed to have built up and held a chemistry with Kyler Murray dating back to last season, and he's seeing a lot of targets. The downfall of an older Adam Thielen has been the emergence of a Jonathan Mingo. I think you're going to see the rookie Bryce Young throwing to the rookie Jonathan Mingo a lot more as the season goes. So if I'm in deep need of a wide receiver, those are the 3 wide receivers I'm looking at: Jalen Hyatt, Greg Dortch, Jonathan Mingo.
Glad you brought up Jonathan Mingo, because that's somebody that I was thinking about in my morning mimosa segment.
Yeah.
What was it? What do you end up having? Like 5 for 50-ish?
I was going to say, I think it was 11 fantasy points. Yep.
Yeah. So like that's the level, again, rookie wide receivers. This is kind of around the time where you're like, all right, they need to start figuring this shit out. I mentioned it with Rashee Rice. Hopefully this is it for Jonathan Mingo, because now that Frank Reich is gone, they need to see what they have. Can Jonathan Mingo be the wide receiver 1 in this offense for this team? And he came out as a very raw prospect when it came to actually being a traditional wide receiver. He's very talented in terms of what he brings it from a skill set perspective, but they need to be able to use him as an actual wide receiver, not in a Deebo Samuel type role, right? So Adam Thielen probably still going to see some targets, but I don't think you're going to get the top 10 wide receiver production from Adam Thielen that you've been getting through 10 weeks. So,
and I think we saw it this week. You're going to start seeing plays drawn up for Mingo, whereas
they need to. They need to. 100%.
I think people are forgetting Juwan Johnson missed a lot of weeks with injury. He's come back, and no matter what's going on in the offense, he's been heavily targeted. Taysom Hill is still getting his as a gadget player. Juwan Johnson is the tight end there. And now if you're going to see Chris Olave miss games, if you're in need of a tight end, Juwan Johnson is the guy who's going to see enough targets, available in over 90% of leagues. And then at running back, it's very slim pickings, but Josh kind of like talked about the schedule is still moderately nice, at least for the next week, for Rico Dowdle and the Dallas Cowboys. Dowdle has really stepped up to be the backup running back there. It never ended up being Deuce Vaughn like we thought it was going to be Deuce Vaughn. He's getting involved in the passing game. It was a receiving touchdown that he scored on Thanksgiving against the Washington Commanders, but he's been involved for multiple games almost consecutively now, coinciding with that easy schedule for Dallas. One of the things I'm looking for at this time of year is any running back who's an injury away from being a starter. If I have the bench spots, I'm going to go grab them. So on a lot of my teams, I have Tyjae Spears and Keaton Mitchell and Ty Chandler and things like that who are just sitting there on waivers. And I'm like, well, fuck it. You don't know what's going to happen. And an injury away, it's someone who I'm going to want on my team in the fantasy playoffs. And to that same point, I'm going to go to Caesar's comment here. First of all, please go against my advice. I joke about my ego on this show. I will admit my bad advice, and sometimes it doesn't work. But I will say right now is actually the time you should be hoarding defenses. So you are taking my advice because you should be playing the schedule right now. If you have the spots on your bench and there aren't backup running backs worth grabbing, defenses are my next option. I'll let the waiver wire be my running back, or excuse me, my wide receiver pool, Josh. There's so many wide receivers out there. I want the running backs, and then I want the defenses with good matchups. And right now you
don't stream the Lions and you're good.
Nope. Don't. Oh my God. First of all, we talk about the home run I hit on Pat Freiermuth. My stream of the week tight end is going to be my highest scoring streamer this week. But yeah, don't stream the Lions. I will say the fucking Colts. Go look at the rest of their schedule. It is obscene. The Colts are going to be a heavy pickup. You may be able to play them from now through the fantasy playoffs. It's a very, very nice schedule. If you need one for next week, Tampa Bay Buccaneers looking mighty fine against the Carolina Panthers. Josh, we got the Monday night Bears taking on the Vikings in Minnesota. Justin Jefferson listed as questionable in this game, so I'm going to add one question here. So the line is Minnesota -3. The over-under is 43.5. And do you think Justin Jefferson plays, Josh?
No, I don't think we see him until week 14. Vikings have a week 13 bye. I don't think there's really any need to rush him back. The Bears, this is a very winnable game. I don't know that they cover the 3 because I think they probably win by 3, but I think it will be under 43.5.
Yep, I was definitely agreeing with the under, but I think the Bears are going to win this game, Josh. I don't know. The Josh Dobbs thing, I don't know what to make of Josh Dobbs. I want to hate him because he won one game in Arizona, and then he comes over to Minnesota and doubles his win total immediately. And so you just don't know what you have out of Josh Dobbs. So I'm not ready to buy in yet. I think Justin Fields comes out and has himself a good game tonight and makes my DJ Moore pick for the guy who took Zay Flowers over him look a lot better. So
all I know is I need DJ Moore to outscore TJ Hawkinson by 4 fantasy points. That's what I need. That's what I need.
I think you'll get that. It's going to be an
get that. I'll be good. I'll have won in all of my dynasty leagues that I needed to win in and lose in all of the ones I needed to lose in. So we're good.
The beautiful art of tanking, folks. Thank you to everybody.
Productive struggle, Ryan.
The productive struggle. Yes, absolutely. Shout out to our boy Mike. No, I love it. Everybody who tuned in, everybody who gave questions, we appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure you're following Club Fantasy on all the socials at Club Fantasy FFL. You can hit us up on YouTube. Hit the subscription button. It does absolutely means the world to us, where it costs you absolutely nothing to help us get towards that 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. You can always hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're still answering questions on all of those websites. We have articles dropping every single day of the week. We have a full array of live shows, apparently without Joe this week on Wednesday. I'm just now learning this, but we're going to be here for you and getting you guys into the fantasy playoffs. For Josh, I'm Ryan. This has been Monday's Hangxiety. Have a wonderful day, and I hope your Monday miracles come